which is open to the press and public on request. This meeting will not be broadcast live. However, a recording will be made, and as soon as possible after the meeting has been concluded. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members attending via Microsoft Teams refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance...
I think the chair is muted.
Oh, I think the mic, is it on there?
Yeah, you're right. Do you on? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now I got an echo. How is that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. I'll start again. I'm sorry for that. Okay now. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this multi-location hybrid meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which is open to the press and public on request. This meeting will not be broadcast live. However, a recording will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting has concluded. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today. This meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can members attending via Microsoft Teams refrain from using that chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. May I remind members that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 that our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by the members of public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, welcome and apologies. Jade, do we have any apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Please, Jade, please can you ask the members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any interest to declare?
Of course, thanks, Chair. Starting with Councillor Ashley, please.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Byrne, please.
None that I'm aware of, and I'm really struggling to hear you.
I was about to say the same thing. It's a bit tinny in the chamber at the moment.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'll see if I can sort the sound out.
You, Nick.
Is that any better?
Yes.
That's much better, thank you.
That does appear to be better, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jade.
And carrying on, Councillor Jones, please.
My wife's in receipt of a council pension. Nothing else.
Thank you. Mr. Kelleher, please.
I'm in receipt of the council pension too.
Thank you. And yourself, Chair?
I don't think it's relevant to this meeting. I don't think there's any mention. Thank you.
And Mr. Rees, please.
Nothing that's relevant to this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Moving on to agenda item 3, the minutes and governance of Audit Committee from the 17th of January. I'm assuming everybody's read these. Members, please can you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. I see no hands raised, therefore I will take them as agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 4, the action sheet. There were no actions arising from the previous meeting. Members, please could you state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the action sheet? If not, we'll note its contents. I can see nobody with hands raised. Thank you. We'll take those as read. Item agenda 5, the risk management annual update. Kath Joseph, Senior Corporate Improvements and Scrutiny Officer, please can you report? Thank you.
Morning members, nice to see you all again. So today I'm bringing you the annual report on risk management in order for you to undertake your assurance role by noting the progress made during the past year to improve the Council's processes for the management and monitoring of risks. I'm aware that you will have read the report, but there are a couple of formal things that I'll go through first, and then I'll take you through some points around the progress. So, as members of this committee are aware, the Local Government and Elections Act 2021 repealed the Local Government Wales measure of 2009. However, there is still a requirement for councils to be accountable for the performance of their services and to ensure appropriate mechanisms are in place to keep performance under review through robust self-assessment. Our governance arrangements play a vital role in enabling us to deliver our functions and use our resources effectively. The managing and monitoring of risks forms part of these governance arrangements. Members will be aware that risk management is the planned and systematic approach to the identification, evaluation and control of risks. The objective of risk management is to secure the assets and reputation of the Council and to ensure our continued financial and organisational well-being. Whilst it's acknowledged that some risks will always exist and will never be eliminated, it's important the Council identifies, evaluates and accepts responsibility for the risks associated with its work. And although I bring this report to committee annually, sometimes I think it's useful to refresh members on your roles when it comes to risk management within governance and audit. So governance and audit committees are a key component of the authority's governance framework. Your purpose is to provide an independent and high-level focus on the adequacy of governance, risk and control arrangements. Committee's role is to ensure that there is sufficient assurance over governance, risk and control, which gives greater confidence to all those charged with governance to ensure those arrangements are effective. So that's the formal part of the meeting, and I'll move on now to the progress that we've made over the past year. So I included in the report, and I won't go through it in detail, the big changes that came about last year as a result of the review that was requested by the Chief Executive, such as changing the register to a tiered approach, scoring the risks numerically, and introducing a monitoring process where officers are asked to give an expected date of de-escalation for each risk. So at that time, you will recall that of me bringing that report to you, those changes were really new, and we brought them to you with only really sort of a quarter and a bit's worth of monitoring of those. So they were yet to be fully established and embedded within the authority. So over the last year, the Corporate Risk Monitoring Group has really sort of monitored closely how those changes have sort of taken place and taken shape within the directorates. On the whole, we feel that it's improved and it's embedded within, and working well, but there's one slight exception. And I say slight. The exception is that there's been a number of instances where we've had requests that the estimated date of de-escalation is changed. This is where officers will put forward a risk and say, we expect it to have moved down the register by an anticipated date. What we're finding, either they haven't de-escalated by that date, or it's clear that they're not going to. So there's been requests of group to look at that and assess whether or not those dates can be extended. So as a group, we've looked at this, and based on it being a new process, we think it's likely that in a lot of cases, the original dates were a bit overambitious when they were first put forward because it was new. Nobody really knew, the purpose of it, how it was going to sort of embed as we were going along. it's become apparent as part of our robust quarterly monitoring. So we can see that it has caused some problems. What it has done, though, is highlighted to those officers and to the directors and chief exec that they need to put a lot more thought into that process. As they're putting risks forward, they need to clearly think what those mitigations are, how long they will take, and when they think there will be some movement. You know, and that's something that we haven't asked of officers to do before. So in one way, we accept that that's new and we need to accept that and let it embed. But on another, we want to be sure that going forward, it isn't something that continues to happen. So the agreement we've made with leadership team is that for the remainder of this year, so Q3 and 4, any changes to de-escalation dates we'll accept. But from Q1 next year, an additional column will be added to the risk register that says the original date that they gave and then any changes so that we can clearly see and monitor if people are asking for extension upon extension. And at that point, there is that detailed conversation that we can have and challenge as to, well, are they the right mitigations in the first place then? You know, so there's more discussion and more challenge around whether or not those risks should be moving or not. So although it was new last year and we think it is embedded, there's still a little bit more tweaking that we need to do and working with officers to give us that absolute assurance that they are being monitored. But like I said, we are putting in steps to do that. So then that's sort of the oversight of how we've monitored the changes. But as you're aware, as a group, we monitor risks quarterly anyway. So this works by officers providing us with a quarterly update against every risk, regardless of its tier. And we then look as a group at any proposals to change the score, and they have to give reasons for that score. It can't just be changed, there has to be evidence as to why. Any changes to estimated escalation dates, which I've just mentioned, changes to whether or not a risk is treatable or tolerable. We look at new risks to ensure that they're scored appropriately, that the what's the word I'm looking for? The guidance that we use and the criteria for scoring, that they use that as they put their risks forward. And we also look at removal of risks to be assured that those risks have been mitigated before they come off the register. Also, leadership team now look at risks as part of their 12-week performance monitoring cycle. So once every 12 weeks, a report goes to leadership team. They have sight of the full register, so all the risks regardless of the score. They have any details of any of the suggested changes so that all of leadership team are fully aware of why a risk might have changed. We take on board horizon scanning. So some people might come to us and say, I don't think this is a risk quite yet, but this is on the horizon. We need to think about it. We need to keep it in our minds. We share that with leadership team so everyone is aware that there are possibilities of new risks coming forward. And also as a group, we share intelligence with leadership team around some of the things that we've picked up on that might be cause for discussion going forward. So that's our usual, business as usual, if you like, for monitoring. So an overview of the current risk register as it stands, which is at Q3, which is October to December. We have 8 risks on the corporate tier, 27 on the directorate tier, 13 on the service tier, which is 48 in total. The last time we brought this report, we had 54 risks on the register. I have to point out I've made an error, I'm afraid. I said in the report that there were 6 new risks. There were actually 5 new risks in the year ahead, or the year just passed, sorry, and there were 11 that were removed from the register. So that's to give you an overview of how we now see this working. There is movement around the register. Another thing to bring in that's new from previous years, I say new, continuous learning. We'd like to think that as a group we're always doing that. But in the last year, there's been a newly established network group run by the WLGA. It's a risk management network group. I've joined it, and I have found that it is really useful because you are liaising with and networking with other people in the same role in the other 21 local authorities. I think it's a really positive experience, and what I am pleased with is that our processes are very similar or in line with the others, so we all must be doing either something right or something very wrong. So in conclusion, I think that the group feel that we are very proactive in our work that we do with risk management. We ensure that those risks are monitored. You know, we've got a good relationship with the officers who bring risks to us. They are very open, and we feel that by the improvements that we are making year on year, that each time we bring this report to you, our processes are strengthened further. So members, we hope that you can be assured that the Council's processes for identification and monitoring of risks is even more robust now and effectively implemented, and hope that you are satisfied, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions with regards to this report? Thank you for that report. Are there any questions? Mr. Kelleher, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the explanation. I think there's a huge improvement from last year's report in terms of the way the risks are visibly arranged so that we can understand them fully. I've got a couple of questions with regards to the direction of travel columns. The expected direction of travel, in your opening remarks, I've picked up for the first time, this is about de-escalation, or am I wrong on that? It's not clear in the table. And the second thing I'd just like some clarity around is the use of terminology in the direction of travel. There's a sort of variety of terms used. Give a couple of examples on some of them. Page 22, risk reference 21 has got a quarterly date, which suggests that de-escalation may be happening then. But on the same page, say risk reference 14 says tolerate. On another risk 30, it says ongoing. So the different uses of different terminologies just throw me understanding of the table out of kilter somewhat. Is there any chances of clarity on that for me?
Yes, of course, and there's some good questions there. So the current direction of travel column, there are three options in that column, which are increasing, decreasing or static. So that's very much to say whether or not a risk has sort of moved up the register, up the tiers or scored more highly, whether or not it's moving down, which is obviously what we want, or whether that risk has remained static. So does that answer that question on that column for you?
Yeah, that's fine on the current direction of travel. Thanks for the clarity on that.
Yeah, I'll move on to the next.
It's the column next to it that confuses me slightly more.
Okay. Yeah, you have got a point there, and it's very much, some people will just give us a quarter, a period of time that they expected to travel. Other people like to provide a lot more information as to what they expect to happen in that time. If it says tolerate, the reason for that is that if we have risks on our register that we have decided that we will tolerate because there isn't anything more that we can do to move that risk down the register, then we wouldn't ask for a date of de-escalation because we accept that risk has to stay where it is. But going forward, I think you're right, and there's more that we can do there to try and get some consistency in that column. And I'd be happy to take that forward.
That's brilliant, thank you. It's just you know, I would personally expect as a layperson that the direction of travel would be some consistency in terminology between the two columns somewhere. And where a date for de-escalation can be identified, that's brilliant. And that gives us extra information. Thank you for that.
No problem.
And by the way, I do apologise. I'm contending with a major ash dieback project outside my window. So if it's coming through when my microphone's on, apologies.
Thank you for that, but no, it's not a problem at the moment. Right, Councillor Ashley, you have your hand raised.
I think the previous couple of questions were quite good for clarity point of view. I found it absolutely fascinating, Catherine. What I'm interested in is the question that we bring up at scrutiny and also through council seminars on this. Obviously, as audit what we do on this committee is actually a clarity around things that have actually been contentious for this council. The where a financial implication is, whether it's tolerable or not. I was reflecting the recycling's one, or the ones where there's a financial or a legal implication. Obviously, the implications of what you're saying on here are quite profound, whereas other things can be tolerable. It's the language. It's what previous person said on this. Maybe we need a glossary of terms to go along with this for members of this committee. That would be very useful. I say this on all committees I serve because education and social services flummox me as well. But the glossary of terms would be useful to go alongside this. You've obviously put a lot of work into this, and it's actually quite clear. The other thing that would be useful, and I say this, I'm wondering whether the traffic light system could come into play on this, because we have it on other things. Otherwise, it's actually really useful to look at this.
Thanks, Councillor Ashley. In relation to the traffic light system, the risk register is split, as I said, between tiers, with the corporate risks being the highest score, the directorate risks the middle, and the bottom score being service risks. We have been told that for accessibility purposes on the website and online, etc., the colours can be very difficult. So we've taken the colour out of this particular thing, and it's just in the report it explains that corporate risks are the highest because they are the highest score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose all the actors are familiar with the terms, so you don't need traffic lights. It's only for us lot maybe that it needs that.
Okay, yeah, is that okay?
No, that makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
But as far as the risks you've got, some of them are different, aren't they? Some are financial, some of them reputational. We're looking at in terms of these risks.
Yeah. When risks come forward to be accepted onto the risk register, there's a risk template that they have to complete, and on that template they have to say whether or not it's operational, financial, reputational. So at that point we are able as a group to assess what level of risk it is. So we know that when we accept the risk onto the register in the first instance. Yeah,
but you've got quite a few different ones sat there amongst each other. I mean, you've got the well-being and global climate change sat there with stuff that's if we don't do it within the next year or so type things, we get a fine. So that's normal, is it?
Yes, it is, because obviously we can't in most situations pin a time on a risk, whereas with the ones you've just said about like reducing our carbon, etc., Welsh Government have given us timescales. There's 2030, 2050. In those instances, we know that we have a timescale that we have to action something by. In general, the majority of the risks are risks that we would hope we would be able to deal with in a shorter space of time. But some risks may have numerous criteria attached to them. They could be environmental, they could be reputational, they could be financial. Others might be just one of those. So, it would make the risk register quite unwieldy to have so many extra sort of columns and rows to show which risks they were. But we have that information behind us as soon as a risk is attached to the register. Does that help at all?
Oh, no, I get it straight away. Don't worry, because obviously, as active councillor, we're living with that one all the time. Thank you, Kath. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Mr. Rees, you have your hand raised.
Diolch, Chair, and diolch, Catherine, for this very, very useful report. And could I just comment? It's also very useful for you to put in there that reminder of our role. It's useful to have that from time to time. I just wondered whether you could just comment on this. You mentioned that there are some tweaks that have to be put into this new system regarding the de-escalation comments. It is a new system, and you recognise that you know, it has to be changed. But I'm wondering whether you're able to give us an opinion on comparing the system that we've got now here, which seems to be working very, very well, compared with the old system. Basically, is this now doing the job better than the old system? And then just two little specific questions. You mentioned the WLGA risk management network. Is that now a permanent thing, an ongoing thing that we'll be part of? And then in the actual risk register, one of the columns there has got the heading treat or tolerate. I just wondered if you could give a little bit of detail on as to what that terminology is, just for information. Diolch, Pat.
Yes, of course I can, no problem. So I'll start at the beginning, where we talked about the changes made to the risk register and the tweaks around de-escalation, etc. You know, and I hope I emphasised enough in my presentation that although we found that there were some issues with that particular thing, everything else has really embedded in, and we're really confident about that. We feel that the challenge is now so much stronger, especially with it going to leadership team every 12 weeks as well. And that de-escalation column is really starting to hold officers to account. And like I said, we've almost taken a light touch for the first few quarters of this year, understanding that asking people to put a date on something is new to them and they've not sort of done that before. But going forward, that challenge is definitely going to be more robust, and leadership team are well aware of that. So I am confident, and I believe the group are confident as well, that this has improved, definitely. WLGA network, yeah, it's been running for probably a year now. Maybe it was either just starting or just about to start when I came last March. The meetings are quarterly. And we have the opportunity as members of that group to put forward items to discuss. So if someone had a particular issue or were concerned about something and wanted advice from other authorities as to what they were doing, we're able to put those options forward. So it's not dictated to us what it is that we discuss. So that's really useful, and it's always really, really well attended. So I've not heard anything different about it not being an ongoing group. It's always well attended, so I think that will remain. I've not heard anything to the contrary of that. And then finally, the treat or tolerate column. Yeah, what we've tried to do there, and as I said right at the start of my presentation, we accept that there are some risks that we absolutely know will always remain on the register, that we've done all that we can to mitigate them, but they will always remain a risk for the council. And those risks are what we class as tolerate. We have to accept that they will remain on the register. We still have quarterly updates on them. They're not left and ignored. I can assure you every risk on the register has a quarterly update provided. But we accept that we won't expect to see it come down or even removed off the register. The majority of risks on there are treat. So what we're saying there is, we've got a risk, we understand what it is, and we know that there's things we can do about that risk. We can do mitigating activities that will bring the risk down the register, lower its score, and hopefully, not in every situation, but hopefully remove that risk from the register, because the mitigations we have are the right ones and they will remove the risk or reduce the risk. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Catherine. And just one last thing. While you were talking there, it just reminded me, I took part in a WLGA briefing for members of governance and audit committees last week, and I think it was repeated yesterday. I'm not sure if everybody on the committee was able to attend, but they said that they would be forwarding the presentation slides. When I've received those, if the chair is okay, about this, I can share it with everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, that would be fine. Thank you, Mr. Rees. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for your explanations, Kath. I've got a few questions of the specific risks on within the register. I know it's a new format and it is great and it's really easy to read. But on page 23, risk 54, it's a risk of weakened statutory local policy framework. Appeals after the 31st of March 2021. You've got reviewed December 2026. That seems a long time when you say you're going to treat it. Is there a reason for that? Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Yes, there is. So that risk is around the LDP ending in March 2021. We are now in the process of preparing new RLD, and that is due to be adopted by the Council in December 26. Now, there is obviously sometimes there are things that might delay that. So at the moment, we've put December 26 as the review date. As long as everything goes to planning, that will become the new adopted RLDP, and then that risk will be able to fall off the register. But those plans take a number of years to finalise. That's why the date is so
such a long time away. Yeah. But in the meantime, the risk that we're running with is manageable?
I believe so. It's not changed, or the score hasn't changed since it's been on there, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. And there was another one on page 27, risk 97. There's a risk to health and safety of building users and staff due to ongoing uncertainty around building management and arrangements. Should we be concerned about this? Are they our buildings, or are they buildings that we haven't got any control of?
It's one building, and it's a building that we use for some of it. And the concerns are around, we're using part of a few rooms of a particular building, but they were concerns that there was no one taking ownership of the health and safety within that building. So whilst our staff are in there, there was concerns that they wouldn't know who to go to if there were issues. So a group has been set up of all of the people, so the owners of the property and the people who use it, and they're starting to work through a plan of action. And I've been made aware that this risk is likely to come off the register quite shortly once all of those things have been tied up.
Excellent, thank you. It's nice to know that the system's working. Thank you. Are there any other queries or questions with regard to this report? No. Then recommendations are on page 18 that we accept this report. Can I see anybody who's abstaining or not happy with that? I see no hands raised, so we'll accept this report. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. At this point, I'll leave the meeting now.
Okay, thank you very much for your input, and thanks for answering all the questions. Cheerio. Thanks. Bye. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the Audit Wales Quarterly Update Report. Audit Wales are with us. I think it's Charlotte Owen. Are you going to take the lead in this report, please?
Hi, Chair. It's Alice King. I'll kick off the report and then I'll pass over to Charlotte, if that's okay.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you.
Right, thanks. So, thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you all today. We're presenting here our quarterly update. So this is up to quarter 3 for you, just to give you an update on the progress of our work to date. So on the first page there, we have our annual audit summary. A quick update on that. We have issued our annual audit summary. It's with your senior officers, and I believe it's due to be presented at the next meeting of this committee. So hopefully we'll be bringing that to you shortly. An update then on our financial audit work. So I'm pleased to say that the majority of our audit of the grant claims, that includes housing benefit, teachers' pension, national non-domestic rate of return, your money transfers, pooled budget and social care workforce development, those grant claims, the audit work is complete on all of them. We're just working through the certification process for the final few, but that work has progressed really well. So hopefully that will all be complete by the next meeting, this committee. Finally then, for the financial audit work, a short update on our 23-24 audit of your financial statements. That audit work hasn't commenced yet, but we've undertaken quite a lot of audit preparation work with Dave and Nigel. It's been really successful to kind of set up the audit for the next year. So I'm pleased with the way that we've been engaging with your officers on that one, and we'll be able to provide more of an update on the timetable at the next committee meeting for when that work's going to be undertaken. So at that point, I'll pass over to Charlotte, and I'm happy to take any questions on the financial audit work once Charlotte's gone through her section of the paper.
Thanks, Alice. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'll just run through quickly the performance audit work. Conscious that the date of this update is up to the end of December. So as I'm going through, I'll just update you on the current position of things. So in terms of the 22-23 performance audit work, the assurance and risk assessment, the financial position work, that's an ongoing monitoring of financial positions. There's no output related to that, but it will feed into some work we've got coming up on financial sustainability, which we will receive a report on. The capital programme management report that was in our original work programme now isn't going to take place under that year, but we will look to schedule that work in a future year. The service user performance information review, we issued the draft report to the council in December. We have since received comments from them and finalised that report, but it didn't quite make the deadline for the committee papers for this month's committee, so that will come to you at a later date. The unscheduled care review, I believe the reporting on that should be imminent. It should be over the next month or two, so hopefully by the time I next see you, we will finally have this report out. The thematic review on digital strategy and vision, the draft report has been issued and we have received the comments back from the council on that, and we're working through those at the moment, so that shouldn't be very long before the final report is issued. Then on to the 23-24 performance audit work programme. The assurance and risk assessment work, this is sort of largely behind the scenes work. We did hold a workshop with senior leadership and the cabinet last month, and the work from that will inform our audit work programme for next year. So you'll see the output of that really in terms of the audit plan that comes to you. Then a few pieces of work that are coming up, a thematic review on commissioning arrangements. So the project brief on that has now been finalised. We'll be issuing that to the council shortly, and we've had conversations about potentially holding that work in the early autumn. The thematic review on financial sustainability, that work should be kicking off quite shortly. The project brief is just being finalised and is about to be sent out, and we're hoping to get that work done during April with a view to reporting by the end of June. Then counter-fraud arrangements, this will be a follow-up piece of work to some previous work that was done on tackling fraud. We've spoken to the council about coming in to do this work in the summer, so probably July time. So again, be reporting on that after the summer. Then just quickly in terms of the local government national studies, there's nothing new that's been published there. So there's a few that are due. The National Parks Governance one, I think that's been slightly delayed. That should be coming out very soon. And the others are sort of underway. And those will come through to you at a later date. And then, yeah, there's just an update then on some of the work of Estin and CIW, which I won't go into, but very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much both for that report. Does anybody have any questions or queries with regard to this report, please? Mr. Rees, your hand is raised.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Charlotte and Alice, for your report. Very, very useful. Something that I find really useful is the section that you have at the end, where you have the list of all the different national audit reports that you do on specific subjects and links to the actual reports. So I've got a question on one of them, if you're able to answer. There's a report that was done in November of last year on corporate joint committees, and when I looked into that report, sort of the general message is that they're all a bit patchy, and in the different regions, you know, some are working quite well, some not so well. So, and this is a new thing, I know. Is there some kind of timetable that has been outlined to all of the councils within the different regions of Wales that these CJCs will be, you know, set up by and running properly by such and such a date? I wondered if, you know, you've got any answer to that at all. Thanks.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't. I wasn't involved in that piece of work, but I'll certainly go away and see if I can get an answer for you and get back if that's okay. But yeah, apologies. I would try and make something up, but it would be completely made up. So I'd rather go away and get back to you if you don't mind.
Please don't apologise. That's it would be very useful if I could have some detail on where they are going. I am interested in how they are working. Thanks.
I'll certainly get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We do realise that you don't actually have input in every word of every report that you put on this list. Thank you. Are there any questions or queries? Any other hands? No. Right. Thank you both for presenting these reports and coming to see us today. We appreciate all the work that you do have input on. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 7. The Council Action Plan for Governance and Improvement. Mr. Tom Roberts, Business Democratic Support Service Manager. Can you present the report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair, and sorry for turning up a little bit late. I was double booked. The report I'm presenting today is your 6-monthly update report on the Action Plan for Governance and Improvement. The report presented provides an update on the progress made delivering actions associated with external audit work under the portfolio of this committee. As noted under 4.1 of the report, Appendix 1 provides an update for March 2024 on the actions this committee is continuing to monitor that were developed to mitigate recommendations and proposals for improvement received in our regulatory reports. Please note where officers feel that a recommendation has now been fully actioned, a suggestion has been made to remove it from your monitor. Providing members are happy to do so, these will be removed from future monitoring. The report ordinarily also includes details of new external audit reports, recommendations received by the Council that will be addressed in line with the committee's agreed reporting protocol. However, as noted under section 4.2 of the report, there are no new external audit reports that have been received. Finally, the report also sets out under section 4.3 that those recommendations reports that will be monitored by our scrutiny committees will be undertaken in July 2024, reviewing progress made delivering external regulatory recommendations and or proposals for improvement. The Governance and Audit Committee will be updated following this review. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for Tom with regards to this report, please? Okay, I see no hands raised. I do, however, have a question sent in by Councillor Williams, who can't make this morning's meeting. On page 48, the educational services in Torvine, I think it's relating to that. How can this committee be reassured that education priorities identified in the Estin inspection that put Torvine into special measures are being addressed on a whole council basis? And what oversight can this committee bring to ensure that internal audit is effectively monitoring the Education Strategic Improvement Board and actions being taken forward? The second question was, what oversight can this committee bring to ensure that internal audit is effectively monitoring the Education Strategic Improvement Board and actions being taken forward?
Regular updates are being brought to full council on the progress being made against the recommendations that are being that were made by Estin following the review of Torvine Council. So all members are getting a full update on the progress that we're making. Estin are coming in and a recommendation by recommendation, providing updates on how they see that we're progressing. Those follow-up letters are being distributed and communicated to members also. So there is plenty of communication of progress going on. As far as this committee is concerned, as I said in my introduction, the scrutiny Education Scrutiny Committee will be doing their own piece of work in the summer on all the recommendations that have been received and checking on that adequate assurances have been given against each recommendation. Following that piece of work, I will be reporting back into this committee on the committee's findings. So hopefully that kind of completes the circle.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that was... Sorry, Peter, you've got something to say.
In terms of the question about the role of internal audit on the Strategic Improvement Board, we have no role in that at the moment. I can certainly check whether there needs to be any input from internal audit and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rees, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for the report. I just got a quick query on page 70, looking at what I've got here in front of me. There's reference there to the council's wellbeing objectives, and there's a reference there to staff training, that 46 staff have completed wellbeing of future generations e-learning, which has been updated in Q3. I'm just wondering, are all staff of the council expected to do this training? So is that just a snapshot of what has happened in Q3, but in Q2 and Q1, others have done it? And do you keep a record of staff that have completed that training? And is there a timetable for, say a new staff member joins, that they have, X number of weeks, months or whatever, that they have to then, do that particular training? Thanks.
Yeah, as I understand it, at the moment, the Future Generations training isn't a mandatory piece of training. There's been a review of the mandatory training that's required across all members of staff, and the Future Generations package isn't one of them. We do push it periodically to enable members of staff to do it if they so wish. It's not my data, but as I understand it, that is 46 members of staff within Q3. I can get you more information on that if you so wish. But like I said, it's not part of the mandatory training that the new members of staff need to undertake.
Tom, yeah, and I perfectly understand if it's not classed as mandatory, that's fine. But if you have got some, and it's not too difficult to get hold of that information, I would like to have a sort of idea of how many have taken part in it. Thanks.
I'll see what I can track down.
Okay, thank you for that. I've just got one little query. At the end of the table it says all items that have been struck through have been recommended for removal from the action plan, but nothing's been struck through.
Yeah, I think that that's just something that we've got written on the end of that table, come what may. Until we do the annual review, we won't be striking anything through. So
okay, that's
yeah,
right.
Sorry, that probably should have come off this one.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I guess there was a simple explanation. Thank you. Are there any questions or other questions or queries with regard to this report? Lovely, thank you. Okay, so we'll take them as agreed, unless anybody says anything different. Recommendations are on page 46. I see no hands raised, so I'll assume everybody is in agreement with this. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I will move on to agenda item 8, Internal Audit Operational Plan. Mr. Peter Williams, Head of Audit, please can you present your report?
Thank you, Chair. This is the quarterly update on Internal Audit's annual plan. In terms of page 77, gives the key messages, 2 key messages. Our target to achieve we've got 2 targets for achieving the plan. One is we will do all the core work, which is about 12 significant financial systems, and we've already achieved that. The second target is to achieve 75% of the plan overall. And an update as at today, we currently at 70%, so we probably need to issue around about 4 or 5 additional reports by the end of March to hit that target. We've currently got about 9 which are in sort of work in progress state, so I expect us to hit that target. Even if we don't, in the unlikely event that we don't hit that target, I've done enough coverage in the year across service areas and across systems which will enable me to provide an annual opinion at the June committee. The other issue I'll bring to your attention is we undertook an audit of the annual audit of the human resources and payroll system, and unfortunately there's been a deterioration in the opinion. Last year it was substantial, which meant that of the 13 key controls we tested, 11 were operating effectively. This year, unfortunately, only 6 of those controls are operating effectively, so only 46% of the controls are deemed to be adequate and in place. Therefore, the opinion, as per our scale, is now limited. Jason Lewis is here today, the Director of Corporate Services, who after I complete my bit, he will outline the actions they're taking to get that back to a satisfactory state in the short term. Basically, some of the testing we carried out, just to give a bit more information and a bit more flesh on the bones. Some of the starters we employed didn't have the necessary 2 required references, and there was an inadequate risk assessment in place. Where posts required qualifications, we couldn't access we weren't provided with documentation to show that those qualifications were in place. Some of the medical clearance documentation wasn't in place for some of the sample. Code of conducts and declarations weren't completed for all. Some people have to undertake an eligibility to work in the UK documentation, and some of that was missing. And there were some dates and data missing on starter forms. To be honest, while it's disappointing, I don't see these issues as difficult tasks to correct and get the system back to a substantive state. The operation of an effective checklist and people actually checking these documents in place will get us back to where we were last year. So that therefore, I'm hoping this is going to be a temporary position, and I've been asked to do an audit within a sort of short time scale in the new year, 3 to 4 months, which, assuming that the controls are put in place and there's enough sample, we will do that. And then I will report back to the Audit Committee early in 2024-25 with that opinion based on the work we do then. Paragraph 4.2 outlines the other progress on the other work completed since the last audit. It's the usual black on white colour scheme, and I'm thankful to Jade. She's made my tables a bit bigger this time, so I think hopefully people can read them, which they'd struggled with last time. In terms of what we've done, we've completed in the last quarter, or since the last update to the Audit Committee, nothing of significance I want to bring to your attention other than what I already have with the HR system. There are no high priority recommendations identified in the work done since the last meeting, and the follow-up audits we've undertaken appear to be progressing well with improvement in most of the opinions. Therefore, please to answer any questions. I don't know if Jason wants to come in next to outline where we are with HR and payroll.
Shall we hear from Jason first, because it might preempt some of the questions that are coming? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Peter. Obviously, a very disappointing report to have. We pride ourselves on the standard of the systems that we operate within HR. We're obviously reliant upon managers in supplying us with the correct documentation at the start of the appointment. The audit was across a number of across the whole HR system, both in terms of recruitment, the variations to contracts of employment, and staff leaving the termination activity, and all the issues were within the recruitment process, and a number of those were identified as medium risks. There was one low risk and the rest were medium risks. As Peter mentioned, these are things that are easy to rectify. I think what we've seen is from the last review in 22-23, there was a substantial opinion provided. There's been clearly a slacking in compliance with our policy and our procedures. And what we've done as a result of that is introduce this checklist, and we're not registering new starters as employees on our systems until everything is received, either as a document or as a risk assessment from the managers. So I'm confident now that we've tightened up, and we should be receiving either a full or at least, the very least, a substantial opinion at the next review. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Peter Jones, your question, your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Jason, what were the main factors that led to the deterioration?
I'm really not sure. It's been suggested that us coming out of the pandemic has been a factor. I really don't know. I think there's just been a drop-off of standards, simply, which we've had to respond quite robustly to. We would hope that compliances are given from managers when they're supplying appropriate information for new starters, because clearly there are risks if we don't have references, we don't have right-to-work documentation, we don't have medical clearance. There are clear and obvious risks associated with that. But there has been, for whatever reason, a drop-off in standards, which has meant that we've had to be more robust in terms of what our expectations are as a service.
And can I ask a follow-up? Has it led to any difficult situations, for example, when you've done a qualifications check and you've found, you know, you've employed somebody and perhaps they haven't got the right qualification? Has there been any difficulties as a result of this with staff we've employed?
No, there hasn't, Councillor Jones. And for certain, obviously you'd expect for certain disciplines, for certain professions, the level of robustness by which we would expect to have documentation is different. So if we're employing a social worker or a teacher, they will not start until we have proof of their qualifications, as an example. But if we're employing somebody like me, perhaps my professional qualification is less critical.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask the question? Was this across more than one department or manager, or was it just specifically one department?
It was a couple of departments, primarily, but there was a bit of a spread. Yeah.
That's quite reassuring, really, isn't it? Thank you.
In terms of the samples we take a sample across all the services in the body, so it would have given that extensive coverage.
Councillor Ashley, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this because I thought your systems are somewhat automatic on this. Obviously, they're not. I'm intrigued how, from my experience, the most bureaucracies, which we are, and that's a positive use of the word bureaucracy, it was part of the system. I'm intrigued how this, like Peter, I was intrigued that we got there.
It's always, any system, Councillor Ashley, is reliant on human interaction with it.
Yes.
And this is where it's fallen down. The internal HR system is sound. The interaction with it has left a lot to be desired in this instance.
I appreciate that because you normally have this sort of mantra or this checklist that's on there. So obviously the interaction between the people doing it and but no, appreciate that the Peters department's it's found it and hopefully that's it.
Yeah, I think we should be grateful that it's been identified and it's being dealt with, and hopefully in our next report we'll know that things are put in place. Thank you. Any other questions? No. Right, members, the recommendations are on page 81 of the agenda. Please can you state whether you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain? Otherwise, I will take them as agreed for this report. I see no hands raised, so I will take them as agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and explaining. Good luck. Right, agenda item 9 is the internal audit draft plan. Mr Peter Williams, Head of Audit, can you present this report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is our proposed plan for the 24-25 financial year. Very similar process, in fact, identical process to previous years in terms of we have a rollover of jobs because we don't do all the jobs in 1 year, but that's a planned deliberate act to give us flexibility. We'll be looking to achieve 75% of the audit again next year, but all the core systems. In terms of its preparation, we have a sort of complete list of areas we would audit across the council over a number of years. The frequency of audits are either annual, majority are every 3 years, some are a bit longer, some are a bit shorter. The draft report is currently out to consultation with service directors. I've had responses from most of them. There's still a few to come in. I don't expect any significant changes. If there are any significant changes, I'll bring them back to the audit committee in June and outline what those changes are. Sorry, just my little page. Appendix A shows the audits we plan to do by service area and when the last audits were carried out, etc. There's also we use a risk score, which is it's not a particularly scientific method. It's based on a number of factors, as we outlined in I think it's paragraph 5.1. A series of factors which we score, which gives us a score of whether we think the system is high risk, low risk, or medium risk in terms of fraud or error. And then we will plan the audits accordingly. Those scores are discussed with the relevant head of service when we do the plan of each individual audit, and the risk scores are there for your attention on the appendix. Also, the second appendix is our audit charter. We're required to have an audit charter under the public sector internal audit standards. And as you well know, the last audit committee we presented that report where we were externally assessed by external providers to say we complied with those standards. The charter hasn't changed since the last update to audit committee, so it's there for information. As a bit of a side, the public sector and internal standards which we've just gone through are going through a review at the moment, and they're expected to have a new setting in 2025. Guidance is expected out later this year. When we have that guidance, I'll update the audit charter and do the self-assessment accordingly. But like I said, that plan is now out for consultation, and please answer any questions or any queries on it from members of the committee.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any questions with regard to this report? We must have done that well because there's no questions. I've got one actually on page 100, which is regard to the methodology and the reporting of your reports. Just other discussions as well as a report being sent to the strategic directors that are involved. Do you have a face-to-face meeting as well as sending a report out?
Yes, it varies. Some opt for a meeting, some do it by dialogue, via email. So it's a bit of a hybrid.
Thank you. Right, if there are no other questions.
I did put my...
Sorry, Councillor Ashley, your hand is raised.
Yeah, as to what happened on the previous report, do you actually get down below the heads just occasionally to have conversation about what might seem routine? Because you know, sometimes it's not always routine. And I think the previous items rather flagged that up a bit, Peter.
Yes, we do. Like, for example, in resources, you go to resources, and I go to resources leadership team, discuss it with heads of service there, and they have had discussions with some of their staff below, and that's where they would feed things into me in terms of, oh, there's a change in this system, there's a new system coming in, can we use some of your expertise in recommending controls to new systems? So that dialogue does happen at that lower stage, and then when the actual audit occurs, we agree what we call an audit planning memorandum with the staff, and all that detailed testing and discussion usually happens with, I don't mean, the people who really do the work as opposed to the heads of service and directors, you know what I mean? So, you know, the auditing takes place with the people who are responsible for running the systems. Hopefully I'm not being disrespectful on them.
Well,
that dialogue does take place at the appropriate level.
I get the point about internal audit slog, and you get there, look at things, examine things, and that's the important point about what you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's good to know that it is filtered down. Any other questions or queries? Okay, we'll move on then to the recommendation, which is on page 87. To approve the draft of the 2024-25 internal audit plan as shown on Appendix A, and to note the internal audit charter shown on Appendix B. Please could you state if you're against the recommendations or wish to abstain, otherwise I will take them as agreed. I see no hands raised, so I will take them as agreed. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10, which is the Audit Committee Work Programme. Again, Mr. Peter Williams, please can you deliver this report?
Thank you, just for information in terms of where we are. Most of the boxes are ticked. The ones that are not ticked will be hopefully coming to the next meeting, so there'll be so we'll catch up on that one. And I'm about to embark on sending out a draft skeleton plan for the 24-25 year, and obviously we'll add into that anything that comes out of the self-assessment, because I think Jade sent the self-assessment notes out this week. So I'll convert that into an action plan. Obviously, one of the actions that spring to mind is we will be putting a report to Council on the work of the Audit Committee. So I think if we when I start working on that, we'll probably bring that to the June Audit Committee for the Audit Committee to discuss before it then goes on to Council. So we're all in agreement with what we've done in the areas covered in the year. So I'll incorporate that into next year's work programme. But that's it's just for information.
Anybody want to make any comments with regard to that? I have spoken to Peter with regard to putting together an annual report, and I think if we can bring it back to the next meeting so that you will all feel you've had input and it's not just a report that's generated by Peter, we can then present that to Council. Are we all happy with that? Great. Any other questions, queries? No? Well, that brings us on to agenda item 11, which is the date of the next meeting, which is on June the 26th, 2024. Thank you everybody for attendance. Thank you for your input and your questions and queries. Go away, have a nice time. Hopefully the weather will improve and we'll get some sunshine before our next meeting. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.